One of the most marked things about you, Stuart, is, I guess if I say, you like to win, right? One of my favourite Stuart Pearce stories is the one after the 1991 FA Cup final, when you evidently got back to Forest and saw a couple of directors laughing or something and having a bit of a joke, and you went nuts and said, "Why are you laughing? We've just lost an FA Cup final." Have you always been that competitive?
To be fair, I think most people in my profession like to win. Obviously there's some that like to win a little bit more than others, but I don't see myself really too much different to anyone else, you know. Football's my life, so you sort of take it home with you. You take a defeat, and then I find it probably a little bit more difficult to switch off and go home and say, well, you know, there's always next week. That doesn't really work with me, you know. But I'll have a bad night that night, and then hopefully come back the next day ready for to prepare for the next game.
Because the interesting thing was that you didn't start playing, you know, like professional football or even semi-pro till you was 21. So was that because when you were a kid, you didn't really want to be a footballer when you were older, or you didn't think you were good enough, or, you know, why did you start so late, so to speak?
I was desperate to be a footballer, like I think anyone else that aspires, that enjoys football. I mean, someone wrote off for a trial to me. I think it was my father or grandfather wrote off for a trial at QPR, my local team.
That was your local team,
And I was there for 6 months, and they released me, and then I never really had a nibble from another pro club until I was 17 and playing semi-pro football, and then after that from Coventry, really. But it wasn't for the want of me not wanting to turn pro. It's just no opportunities there, really, you know. And people turn around to me now and say, "Oh, I can't believe that," and all this. But the bottom line is, you're not good enough at the time, you know what I mean? I probably wasn't good enough. I wasn't particularly big as a kid, you know. I grew when I left school, really. So you know, some of the bigger kids got on. I was always a fair player in my team, one of the better ones, but not. I could always name other players that were probably better than me, but not many of them have come through and made pro.
Well, that is amazing. I wonder how they feel, the kids who were in your team that were better than you, and they look at you with like 76 caps and everything like that. How is that? Is it because you pushed yourself more, you tried more, or is it something just as simple as you were lucky they weren't?
I think probably because I was more professional, really, when I left school. I mean, don't get me wrong, I was the same as my mates. I sort of went down the pub and had a few beers and whatever, and worked for a living and done a bit of part-time football. But I always took that as a big standard for me. I was getting paid for playing part-time football, which was brilliant, you know what I mean? So I always took it quite seriously. I think some people that sort of, as soon as you leave school and you're not training with Arsenal, or you're not training with QPR or whoever, you probably think, well, that's my chance gone. I mean, when I was working for a living, I didn't think to myself, oh, hopefully tomorrow I'll be a professional footballer. I mean, I was thinking, hopefully tomorrow I might get home early. And that's about where it left, you know. So.
And then, of course, Bobby Goal came to see you play when you were playing non-league football at Wilston. And the story goes that he kind of, there was one, he decided after 7 minutes, Bobby Goal, they saw you do, there was one particular tackle where you won the ball cleanly and, like, basically booted their winger kind of 10 foot over the advertising boards at the same time, and then Bobby Goal was evidently said, "That's it, I've seen enough, one tackle and that was enough."
Well, as I say, I think if you base a lot of players you buy on one tackle, you're going to be disappointed on a great deal of occasions, you know. But I mean, I was lucky, you know. Things worked out well for me. I just finished my trade, so it couldn't have worked no better. I mean, maybe if I'd have stayed non-league for a couple more years, then you think to yourself, well, more important things come into your life than concentrating on football all the time.
But of course, within a couple of years after that, you were at Forest. And is it true that even when you joined Forest, were you still part-time electrician?
Yeah, I went to see Cloughie and just basically said to him, you know, do you mind if I carry on working, doing a little bit of work? He said, no, not a problem, to advertising the programme.
Because that is something, it's so interesting looking back at your career. That just couldn't happen these days.
No, it couldn't happen nowadays. I got a phone call from people, sort of, we played Brighton in the League Cup and I had the advert in the programme, and some kid rang me the next morning. I was at home and the phone went, and I answered it and said, "Is that Stuart Pearce, a footballer?" I said, "Yeah." I said, "Why is that?" I said, "This is my work line, you know what I mean?" He said, I didn't believe it was you. I saw this advert and I saw the name and I was at the game last night. I can't believe it." I said, "Do you need any work done?" He said, "No, I just wouldn't know whether it's you or not." you mind clearing the line? I'm waiting for phone calls here, you know.
Yeah.
But
so what was the first time you met Brian Clough? What was he like? Was he a scary guy to meet for the first time, or was he always? Because I've talking to Martin O'Neill recently, who Cloughie used to really down cry, and he was very harsh with all that stuff. You know, no, John Robertson's the talented one. You're the clogger, Martin.
Yeah.
But were you one of Cloughie's favourites? Was he very nice to you?
That's not a word I'd use. I was like anyone else. I was shit scared of him. You know what I mean? He's an absolute legend. You know, I've got autograph books at home with his name in that I'd got his autograph years earlier and stuff like that. I mean, he's a scary character and he's a legend in football. You know what I mean? I think football will be, you know, sadly missing characters of his ilk. You know what I mean? But at the end of the day, when I walked in his office, I was scared stiff and would have accepted anything he said to me, to be honest with you, you know what I mean? So to make out that I wasn't scared of him, I think there's a lot of big names that have been, you know, scared stiff of the man.
I can see no point in you taking corners. I'd much prefer you sticking it in. First of all, I think we've got more skillful players than you to take corners, and secondly, you're one of the best in the club. Get in there. That's what I pay you for.
Is there still now, when you look back on the 12 years at Forest, is there particular games that still stand out with absolute clarity? I mean, whether, you know, 89 League Cup final, 90 League Cup final, the 91 FA Cup Cup final, is there still games which you can like almost recall every single moment?
Yeah, I mean, sometimes there's games that stick out a little bit more, not because they're bigger games than others, but little things happen in them maybe. And to be fair, over my time at Forest, there's been a lot of incidents. You know, I've been involved in the Hillsborough situation. I've been to FA Cup finals, I've been to League Cup finals, I've been playing when Cloughie's come on the pitch and chin supporters, you know what I mean? There's quite a few bits and pieces there that you do remember. I've been involved in relegation campaigns and bounced back again. And, you know, there's a lot of good times, but I think it's a great profession to be involved in, to be honest with you, and I class myself very lucky. And
the other thing which is amazing is, you know, you're only at Forest 2 years, and then you get your England call-up, so it's basically 4 years after playing non-league football, and then you played against Brazil. I mean, what was that like? Was that something were you terrified going into that game, thinking, "Oh, I can't believe it, 4 years ago"? Do you know what I mean? I was just at Wilston, or were you just so excited that you weren't nervous at all?
I think basically I'm the sort of person who's reasonably humble about the profession I do, you know, and having got involved in a game of that magnitude, when you're called in the England squad, the first thought of your mind is, am I good enough? It certainly was in mine, you know what I mean? And to come into a game like Brazil, and there is no bigger game, basically, they are the biggest team in the world, you know. Whether they are world champions at the time or not, certainly over my time, they are the team, you know. But it's one of those, you just hope that you're going to get through the game and not make too many mistakes.
Was it, I'm trying to think, when did the Forest, because I was trying to think of someone going into the England setup like you and with these guys and being a little bit intimidated, but then I thought maybe they were intimidated that here comes someone to join their team who's got the nickname of Psycho. And I thought, when did the Forest fans start chatting that? Was it right from the start?
No. I think it come about sometime... probably around that sort of time with the England call-up in about 87, 88. I mean, a lot of players had sort of nicknames, you know, Rambo, Whiteside and Psychos, and there was... I think the game was inundated with Psychos and Rambos, you know what I mean? But I'm the only one it's stuck on, really, you know?
I mean, what is that like? I mean, being someone who's never had... you know, kind of tens of thousands of people chanting "Psycho, Psycho, Psycho." Is it something you're aware of when you're playing? Do you even hear it? Does it make you feel proud? How does it feel to have that?
I saw it as a bit of fun, really. You know what I mean? And to be fair, I mean, the first thing I used to do at Forest is go out and go straight over to the home end. You know what I mean? And give them a salute there. And you know, I think it got them going. It got me going. You know, so it worked well for the club, to be honest with you.
Yeah. Do you think you're a psycho?
No, I mean, you're talking to me now. I'm sure you don't believe that, do you?
I'm hoping not, no. Yeah. But you are unashamedly unreconstructed punk, which is obviously where, you know, part of the whole kind of Stuart Pearce myth is wrapped up in the punk thing and the ghetto blasters before the game, blaring out the Sex Pistols and everything like that. Were you a genuine hardcore, were you know, pierced punk and everything like that?
No, I was a music lover at the time, to be fair, and I was 13, 14, 15 years old when it all took off, and just enjoyed the music, went to quite a few gigs at the time. I enjoy my music, it's just a release from football, really.
Yeah. And is it true that when you were at Newcastle later on, that Ruud Gullit banned it, and he's like, I'm not having this punk played?
Yeah, to be fair, I mean, it wasn't hardcore punk, I must admit. I sort of try and sort of middle of the road it, and sort of get through to one or two others in the squad. So when I went up to Newcastle, there was no music, so I said to Kenny, do you mind if I'll bring some music in? And Kenny was fine about it, so we had that for sort of a year and a half, and then Ruud come in, and I knew we were in trouble because the first day he come and got involved, we had the music on, and I just heard his voice in the corridor and heard him say to one of the coaches, "What is this shit?" You know? And then I thought, well, we're in trouble straight away then, you know? I thought the music ain't got long to last. And I think it was the next game he's poo-pooed it. And then straight after that he poo-pooed me, so there you go, you know?
Parler, Pearce is the back man, forces him to go round. Oh, it's a brilliant tackle. Superb tackle by Stuart Pearce.
Because I remember when I read the story and it was this thing, you know, Ruud Gullit's banned it. Ruud Gullit, who recently watched UB40 playing Newcastle, and I thought, nah, you're not. You're on a different wavelength there.
Yeah, totally different, I'm afraid. You know, musically incompatible, I think we were.
Did they let you? Did you take the ghetto blaster in the England changing room?
No, we've had music in there, but I've not actually taken a tape of mine in and got involved in with England sort of thing. You know.
So you weren't sitting there in Italia '90 blaring out "God Save the Queen" and like that, the Sex Pistols.
No, I'm afraid not. I weren't sort of involved in that. But as I say, I've sort of helped bring it into Forest and Newcastle, and I went up to Newcastle recently and went into their dressing room, and I'm afraid musically I was very saddened. I really was.
It'd be interesting to go around all the grounds these days and actually see if the continental influence has got to the music.
I think it's crept in somewhere, without a doubt.
Or listen to Jean-Michel Jarre and things like that.
I mean, West Ham is... Well, it's musically frightening, really. I mean, someone will put one record on and you'll go from Elvis to Queen to hip-hop.
It's not good, is it? It's not.
Yeah, it's a mix and match, really, you know.
So let's... I mentioned that Italian night there. Let's talk about that game, the semi-final against Germany. Is it, when you think back on everything, on the penalties, on Gazza's tears, on all that, can you think of an England game that you can remember that had everything, that had such intensity, a more kind of famous England game than that?
Probably not. More to the fact it was the first time that we've been involved in extra time for a long time, and penalties on top of that, and the occasion as well. I mean, it was the World Cup semi-final, you know, so it's probably the worst place to go out, I would say. I'd rather lose in the final, personally, than the semi-final. It was a bad place to go out, to be honest with you, and the circumstances.
6 really well-struck penalty kicks, and now Stuart Pearce, who's done the job for Nottingham Forest. Can he do it for England? He can't! Ildner has made a save. And the score remains 3-3, and the Germans have a kick in hand.
These things happen and they make you stronger character, hopefully.
Why do you think there's any reason particularly that you missed? Did you do anything different? Did you stutter in your run-up? Did you think, oh, I'm going to put it here instead of there? It wasn't...
No, I mean, I made my mind up sort of long before I hit the ball, you know, which way I'm going to do. I decided to smash it down the middle and hopefully the goalie will dive one way. That all went well, but he left his legs there.
His legs there, didn't he?
That's the way it is, you know. But, I mean, since then we've had so many penalty shootouts, it's been ridiculous, you know. They seem commonplace at the moment, you know. So.
What was it like straight after that game in the dressing room? Was it a case of you could hear a pin drop, or were people all geeing each other up and saying, come on, you know, let's go and have a beer, or that? What was it like?
No, it was very quiet, to be fair. Very quiet, very sombre. A lot of tears, not just from myself and Gazza and sort of Chrissy, you know what I mean, but everyone concerned, really, you know what I mean. A lot of players took it quite badly because I think the annoying thing was we knew how close we might have been. We thought if we got past Germany, we'd win the final.
You reckon England could have won it?
Well, I wasn't too impressed with the Argentinians at the time, and I think we were on an upward spiral. But it's easier said than done, and you know, it's like when, you know, years ago, people turn around and say I was a better player than Stuart Pearce, but I'm still an electrician, and he's doing what he's doing. It's easy to turn around and say we could have. You've got to go and do it, you know. So I don't like to hark on that. Just learn by it.
But when you came back, like in terms of fans, when you went to like opposing fans' grounds and everything, did you get? I mean, it's a very different situation. But like when Beckham came back after France '98 and couldn't go into an opposition ground because they were like, oh no, it was your fault and everything. How were opposition fans for you? Were they all right?
People were brilliant, letter-wise, until the season started, and then obviously you're going to get hammered, which I was. But I think it made me a stronger person.
Yeah.
I mean, to be honest with you, I mean, Forest local derby is at Derby, and if I went there and they were cheering me, I think I'm doing something wrong.
They'd find something, wouldn't they?
Yeah,
Anyway, they would.
I'd make sure they'd find something to moan about, you know. But I think it's quite a compliment, actually. You know what I mean? When the opposition fans get at you, you know. So, and I'm sure Bex has took it that way.
Yeah. So if we fast forward to Euro '96 and the quarter-final against Spain, when you're faced with another penalty shootout, was there ever any question at all about you taking a penalty?
Well, it was, because, I mean, we all practiced penalties beforehand, you know. Terry said if you want to take a penalty in the morning or the day before, so everyone did, but no order was organised. Everyone knew that Alan Shearer would take one because he's a penalty taker, but the other individuals was never organised, really, you know, so it was just a case of when the final whistle went to go over to Terry and say, look, I want to take a penalty.
So you did it. There was never any doubt in your mind that if it came to that, you wanted to take one, if you were asked?
I just deemed myself a decent penalty taker, you know. I've missed a few in my career, you know, I've scored a few, but I would rather take one than stand on the halfway line and watch a teammate do it.
Brave man steps forward to take England's third. Banish the memory of Turin. Stuart Pearce. What a penalty! And the relief belongs not only to this championship, but to the World Cup of 1990.
The amazing thing is, after that goal went in, there is a moment where you just you watch it on tapes now, where you do nothing. It's almost like you're frozen for a second, and then you kind of erupt in that. What was going through your head at that time? Did it take a while to sink in? It had gone in? Was it?
I think when you run up to take a penalty, you know that when you hit it, you're sort of in the lap of the gods a little bit. You know, if he saves it, there's that calm before you know what to do. And a lot of players that similar facial expressions. Or if you score, there's that lull until it sinks in. Yes, I've scored, or oh God, I've missed. You know what I mean? If you start celebrating before it actually hits the net, you could look a right Charlie. You know, so I think it's that lull before it sinks in and say, thank God for that, I've hit the back of the net this time, you know what I mean? But
and looking back on it now, do you think to yourself the fact that image of you with the fists clenched and the veins standing out in the neck and that look is, along with Gaza lying down and getting the drink shoved in his throat after that fluky goal that he got against Scotland, that they were the defining images seen by like a billion people around the world, and when people look back at that, they will remember that image of you. Do you think of it at all in terms of that? And does it make you feel a bit strange that that's one of the abiding images? Not
really. It's certainly a picture that I've signed more than most pictures, you know, when people come up to me, and you know, I've probably pulled that face and that emotion and those fists on countless times playing for Forest, you know what I mean? But at the end of the day, it was the occasion, really, you know, and the history that had gone before it. And I think a lot of people, certainly English people anyway, a few Scots wanted me to miss, but I think a lot of English people were pleased that I did score out of everyone that went up to take a penalty that day, you know.
You mentioned Forest there. I mean, of course, after Euro '96, then, you know, I mean, well, at the same time, you know, Forest was going into decline. Frank Clark was sacked, and then you took over. Did you want to take over as manager, or were you forced into it?
I didn't really want Frank to leave. I mean, I like Frank as a person, respect him as a manager as well. So it come as a shock to me. I had a phone call Friday morning, we're playing Arsenal the next day, saying Frank's resigned, the board want you to take over. What's your answer? And I said, hang on a minute, I've just got out of bed, you know. It's come as a bit of a shock. I said, I'll have a chat with you when I get in. Went in and had a chat with the chairman. And to be fair, the club were on the back foot. I mean, we had sort of waiting for a takeover financially. We had no money, being a bit pushed by the bank to sell players. So the club were in big trouble. And to be honest with you, it would have probably been ridiculous to go out and get a manager and wait maybe 1 or 2 months for a takeover, and then the people who take over might have different ideas. So it was probably common sense that I sort of took over, really. You know, I enjoyed doing it, to be honest with you. I enjoyed responsibility, and it was just another step up, really, for me.
I mean, I guess if it was a fairy tale, and it looked like it was at the start, because you got the Manager of the Month award and everything in your first full month. And if it was a fairy tale, Forest would have stayed up. You'd be Forest manager now. You should be in Europe, but it wasn't to be, and Forest got relegated. And then all that nonsense when Scholar took over and Dave Bassett getting appointed as general manager. And still to this day, there's the two stories. The one story is that you wanted to leave the club because you still wanted your international career. You wanted to stay at a Premiership club, and Dave Bassett was annoyed at that. But then the other story is that that you got forced out. They went behind your back, got Dave Bassett and everything. What happened? What was the true thing? Did you want to leave?
Yeah, I mean, I instigated leaving by saying to Irving Scholar that I wanted to leave. A seed was sown in my mind by Dave. He mentioned to me that West Ham were interested in signing me at the end of the season. But at the end of the day, there was nothing untoward, really. You know, my path and the path I took was of my own doing. Yeah. Whether their agenda were that they'd have preferred me to leave the club because, I'm quite strong around the dressing room and whatever, you know. That's as may be, but I mean, that was never sort of really said to me, you know. So, me and Dave, it was difficult for Dave when he came in because I was still running the team for all the time that him and me were at the club together and picking the side. So he was sort of on the outside thinking, well, I'd like to come in and do a bit more, but I'm not doing it unless Pearce asked me to do it. So it's difficult for him as well, you know. Maybe in hindsight, I might have been better off the day Dave walked in the door, and from the club's point of view, by stepping back and let Dave come in, and hopefully Dave would have won Manager of the Month in his first month, and those points might have given us the impetus to stay up. But, you know, hindsight's a brilliant thing. I mean, by me stepping down, I would have stepped down after 3 games if I felt Forest would have stayed up, you know, and it's not an ego thing for me because the club's more important than me.
So you finally have made it to West Ham, albeit via Newcastle, and then there was the amazing recall under Keegan for the last 2 qualifying games for Euro 2000. You would have been in the 2 legs in the Scotland game if you hadn't had the injury. So it's interesting now. As a kind of final question, do you think now that, do you view Euro 2000 as a possibility? If you get back fit and you're playing well and you're playing regularly, is that an aim of yours, or would it just be a wonderful bonus, or is it just totally out of the picture?
Well, I mean, the bottom line is it's a massive bonus. I mean, the 2 games I had before Christmas were a bonus, and when I was sat here this time last year at Newcastle playing Premiership football was a bonus, to be honest with you, you know what I mean? So I think I was just going to see my career out at Newcastle, but you never know what's around the corner in this game. I mean, I'm testament to that, you know. 1 minute I'm in Newcastle reserves and never ever going to play for the first team, because I was told that. To, you know, Harry doing me a favour and bringing me down to West Ham, playing half decent for them, and next thing I'm playing for England. It's ridiculous, really, you know, how sort of I can go from one extreme to the other. But you take everything you can, you know what I mean? Sometimes if you work hard at the game, you'll get your bonuses. I've had a lot of downs in my career. I've had a lot of 1 or 2 ups, you know what I mean? But sometimes you think that they just even themselves out.
Okay, that's it for the profile side. I think we now move on to Deary's magic bag of questions on absolutely anything for Mr. Pearce.
These pieces of 8 in there? Or?
They are.
Very good.
And this just to show how it can be absolutely anything. What's your favourite soup?
Tomato.
Tomato soup. Good, that's schoolboy's favourite. What's the best present you've ever had?
Flagpole.
The flag. Now, is it true you got the flagpole outside your house and you got the Union Jack up it?
Not at the moment.
Oh, no.
The flag of the RAF is flying today.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Why that? Why the flag of the RAF?
Why not? Why not? Great respect for the services.
Yeah, well, that's cool. Favourite song or piece of music?
My favourite song of all time is Anarchy in the UK. Just for everything it encompassed in the 70s. But favourite piece of music, I would have said the Stranglers have knocked out more pieces of music that I'd like than most.
Just because we were actually trying to work it out, we were trying to second guess you before we started filming this. What's your favourite Clash song of all time?
White Riot.
Is it White Riot? I think what did we say? I think White Riot was on our shortlist.
Well, I like the Prisoner.
I thought This Is England. I thought This Is England might be your favourite one. What was your most embarrassing moment ever?
I've had 1 or 2. Probably in my primary school days, someone come up behind me and pulled my shorts down and exposed my bum, and because I was quite a shy lad and still reasonably am, I was quite embarrassed by that. Or
did you let them get away with it?
Yes, I did. I was that
Yeah.
embarrassed, and I tried to swing my right foot at one at Plough Lane once in the right back position, kicked the ground, fell over and went straight into the running track nose first. Then both of them are right up there.
And did the opposition fans take that well and greet it with a...
Yeah, as luck happens, it weren't chocker at Plough Lane.
If there's any
know?
ground you want it to
Yeah.
happen, it's at Plough Lane.
Yeah.
I know. If you could have a motto, what would it be? Motto or
If I
piece
could
of
have a
advice?
motto. Probably the advice I get at Derby a lot of the time. Go forth and multiply. That's as good as any, off the top of my head.
If you could be any film star, who would you like to be?
I would say from my favourite film, Silence of the Lambs, I'd like to be Lecter.
You'd like to be. That's good. Who do you most fancy in the world of sport?
On a sexual nature.
On a section, any female sportsman that you think they're a bit tasty.
In the world of sport, I would say, a couple of years ago, my horse. We fancied him like hell, and we were fancying him to go on to Cheltenham, but he never did. So I would say Archie.
What is your biggest fear?
I'm not very good with heights.
Oh, you're not?
No.
Are you all right with flying? I mean,
I can fly.
Yeah.
Once I get right up, I'm
Yeah.
all right.
Yeah.
But I've done things like hot air ballooning, and I like scaring myself. So,
So you're one of those people that, even though you're scared of it, you'll still do it, just to feel scared?
Yeah, but
Yeah.
going up ladders is a problem for
Yeah.
me. I'll go up and then stop,
Yeah.
get used to it, and go up a bit
And go a
more,
bit
you
more.
know.
Okay, and final one. What is the favourite place you've ever visited?
Zimbabwe.
Zimbabwe. Was that with a football, or was that
No,
on
with
a
my
holiday?
wife, safari.
Yeah. Why Zimbabwe? Was it?
We like animals,
Yeah.
the experiences you have,
Yeah.
the sights, the sounds, you know.
Did you see like lions and tigers and stuff? Like
Yeah,
that?
elephants,
Was it not
super.
scary?
It was, you were with a guide, you know, walking
Yeah.
on foot and with a guide, maybe 2, maybe 4 of you, and just
Yeah.
walking through the bush. It was just different to everyday life
Yeah.
back home, you know.
Did they let you go to a place like that if you're a footballer? Is there not insurance things that mean you're not allowed to go
Well,
to?
I didn't ask people whether I can go up in a hot air balloon, you know. And I briefly mentioned to Frank Clark, I was abseiling once. They were doing a thing for charity, you know,
Yeah.
children in need on a Friday night. We were going up to Leeds, and Frank's pulled the squad in
Yeah.
just to show our faces on a Friday night. The TA were there and said, "Do you fancy doing some abseiling, a couple of you?" So before we had chance to say to Frank, we were out the door and had a bash at that, 14 floors up. So if you stop and ask them long enough, they'll tell you no, but don't ask.
Well, Stuart, thanks very much indeed. It's been great talking today.
My
All the
pleasure,
best.
no problem.